Hey everybody, welcome to another awesome episode of MD Power Hour, starring all the way from Old England, OLDE with an E on the end, Giles Tiger Thomas, and from New England, me, Ron Harris, your online editor. What's up, Giles? How are you, sir?
But originally from Wales.
Wales. I mean, okay.
Yeah. But I always like to point out that I am originally from Wales. So, because obviously, the thing is, I haven't got any sort. I mean, I do not sound like Flex Lewis, do I?
Not at all. So you didn't grow up in Wales.
No, it's right inside the border, and everyone sounds like me. They all sound a bit posh. And but you go a few miles in. I used to have a girlfriend in a place called Caldecott,
Yeah.
and I think it was only like 6 miles away, and she sounded like Flex Lewis. So it was quite.
Like a pirate, basically. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's what Jose Raymond said, wasn't it, about
Well,
Flex Lewis?
Jose does a Flex Lewis impersonation. It does sound more like something out of Pirates of the Caribbean than anything else. But
Caribbean, Caribbean,
Caribbean.
Caribbean.
Yeah, good point there. Me and geography just don't seem to get along, do we? But let's get moving here. This is a great topic. I don't know why we didn't think of this before. I guess we had contests and stuff going on. Gear, we both neither one of us are professional bodybuilders on the Olympia stage, but we've like a lot of you guys out there, guys, and probably a lot of girls, you've done your share of gear. So I thought we'd go into some history because mine goes back to the 18th century, actually, when I started. So I thought I'd do it like kind of an interview format and take us through. So let me ask. I'll ask the first question to you, Giles. How long did you train naturally? And during that period, were you aware that steroids and PEDs existed? Did you ever consider using them long before you used them?
Oh my God! First of all, I'm gonna ask people not to judge me.
Good luck.
Okay, and I consider myself a lot more intelligent than I was many years ago, and a lot
Right.
more experienced, and I've learned a lot of very, very valuable lessons. So I'm going to be completely transparent here. I started training when I was 13, and then when I was 16, I was dieting for my first ever bodybuilding show. And a friend of mine who worked in a supplement shop sold me 100 basically fake Russian D-bol for 20 or 25 pounds. And then what I did when I got home, because I didn't want my dad to see them, I mixed them in a tub of vanadol sulfate, the blue tablets,
Yeah.
and the D-bol were white and the vanadol sulfate were blue. So what I would do every other day, I would take one of these D-bol. And I remember the first day I took it, I remember waking up the next morning and I was like lifting up the sheets, expecting to look like freaking Thor.
Of course.
And I was very disappointed to discover that I did not look like Thor. And well, I never did. Well, I got close.
Yeah. So that was fake. So your first steroid purchase was fake steroids, basically.
Didn't gain anything.
Uh,
Zero.
so
Nothing.
so you're 16 at that point. When did you finally get on some real stuff?
Well, when I was 17, I got 10 Omnidron and 10 Deca,
Okay.
and I injected one ampule a week of each.
Yeah. Just to
And
stop and let people know, because everyone Omnidron was a Polish version of Sustanon. It was 250 milligrams in an amp. Go ahead.
yeah. So and what I used to do on a Saturday night, me and my girlfriend would watch Gladiators. The American Gladiators.
Yeah.
I would watch the British Gladiators, and I'd get all pumped up and get all excited.
Yeah.
And then after the show, I'd be like, right, let's do some gear. And
Oh,
I'd load
God.
it up, and I was so scared about injecting. I would probably only put the needle halfway in. Um, and
Who did this? Did you do your own injections?
Oh yeah, I've always done them. Never had
Oh,
anybody else do mine
wow,
ever.
okay.
So I couldn't do that. I've done other people's as well, and it makes me feel sick.
Okay.
And yeah, so I mean, but again, I didn't really gain anything. And actually, my dad actually rumbled me because I used to have the needles, and then what I would do in my bin in my bedroom, I put them into a Twin Lab Gainers fuel. Remember the Gainer fuel bar, those massive
Course.
bricks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I put the needles inside of them, and I just put it in my bin in my bedroom.
Mm.
And then my stepmom obviously must have emptied the bin and thought, "What's this?" Sit here it rattling. She went to my dad, and Dad said, "Giles, I need to sit down and have a talk with you. We need to have a serious chat."
Uh-oh.
So he sat down and he pulled it out, and my heart sank. I was like, "Oh no," because I thought I'd been so careful, which obviously I wasn't. And he says, "Well, I've been to the chemist next door." He says, "And one apparently is a steroid, the Deca, and he said this one, the Sustanon. He
Yeah.
said this is an adrenaline."
What? Why?
And do you know what I did?
No.
I totally denied it. So,
What do you say? Somebody broke into my room and planted these there? How do you deny it?
I mean, he even had the broken ampules.
Yeah. I mean, come on, dude. You're that's caught dead to rights. You're done.
I know. So I just bullshitted my way out of it. And I said, Dad, this is my friend. This is my training partner, Alex from Hereford. My friend, Alex Waller. I said, this is him. I said, Dad, this is where the bullshit really rolled off the tongue beautifully. I said, Dad, I said, it's hero worship. He wants to be me.
Wow.
Yeah.
You
You know,
are
when you
creative.
just, I mean, I didn't expect to get caught, Ron. So I just, it just, the bullshit just rolled off the tongue. Like that time we told those ladies I was MI6 at the Arnold party.
I mean, I think they actually believe that. So, okay. So you're 18. So that's still, do you think those drugs were real? Because if you didn't see, you should have seen some kind of gains from a first cycle.
I just didn't feel anything off it. I just
Hmm.
didn't, you know, that first. But then the next cycle I did, I think I was about, I might have been 17 or 18. I remember it was cypionate and D-bol.
Okay.
And I remember on like incline dumbbell press, I was doing like 30-kilo dumbbells, like 66 pounds.
Yep.
And I was doing the biggest ones within like 6 weeks. I doubled my poundages. I was on 55 kilos, which are 120s.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
And I was inclining them for like 11, 12 reps. And my
Nice.
strength just doubled. I was squatting 4 plates, leg pressing 10 plates, you know, using decent weight. I was never a super strong guy. But I was lifting some respectable weight. And I remember the cypionate and D-bol, I think it might have been 400 mg of CYP, and it was probably like 30 or 50 milligram of Dianabol, but I really felt some gains off that one.
Yeah. But body weight, did you see things in the mirror? Did you see the scale move?
I didn't like to weigh myself, but I did weigh myself at one point, and I think I put on about 40 pounds.
Oh, 40 pounds. Well,
Yeah.
you should have noticed that. That's a huge, huge jump.
Well, I weighed myself at my training partner's at Alex's,
You know,
and I said, mate, I said, if I'm not over 12 stone, don't tell me. And he said, Giles, you're 15 stone 11.
wow.
So I was 220. Do you know what I mean? I was 220,
Yeah.
and I was looking all right. You know, I was only like I was a kid, you know, but I was shifting. I basically doubled my poundages on everything, and I felt
Wow.
absolutely amazing.
So how long do you think it took you to put those 40 pounds on? What was like the length of the cycle?
Oh, probably probably a couple of years, you know, like a year or two, whatever.
Oh,
But it was
oh, I mean,
leading up to it. Do you know what I mean? I
okay.
never liked to weigh myself. I was always very paranoid about it and
Wow.
insecure about it, and you know, putting 3 tops on, and you know, I was
Okay.
lumberjack shirts, and you know, I was a typical meathead.
Oh, the lumberjack, the plaid shirts were a big deal back then.
Yeah,
They actually made a comeback in recent years.
did they?
Bumstead wears them a lot.
Great for
What's it?
squatting.
There's a gentleman in the UK who that 100% or nothing. I have a couple, and he sent me a couple of years ago.
Leroy
Yes, yes, yeah.
and
So okay. All right. So I'm going to go back to my origin story,
Go
my
on.
superhero origin story. So I started training at 13, 14 as well. And I didn't know anything about steroids. I was the first bodybuilding magazine I picked up, and it wasn't the first magazine. I decided I was going to compete naturally. I had been drug free. So when I was like 18, I decided I was going to do this local. We had a lot of natural organizations at the time, and there was a couple big ones in my part of the country. So I was going to be natural, and I stayed natural for many years. I didn't. I competed naturally from '89 all the way to 1995. And by the time I was in 95, I was already out in California at that time. And I was getting beat by guys who had used drugs. And sometimes I suspected they were still on drugs. So in my little pea brain, I'm thinking, I will go on steroids. I'll do one cycle. I'll put on all this muscle. Then I'll be natural again. But I'll have all this extra muscle that I didn't have before. So fast forward to 1996. It was a dark and stormy night. No, it took me it was a long process just to acquire. So first I got the D-bol, and I had somebody meet me. I used to work for this guy that put on the Muscle Mania and Fitness America pageants, and one of the other guys that was
What was
coming
his
out of
name?
town. Yeah, Lou's Wick. But
Lou's Wick. That's right. He used to
yeah,
ring me
yeah,
on a Sunday. He used to ring me on a Sunday and ask me about the good British juniors.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I
He
used
was
to
a
work in
great
a pub
gentleman.
I used to work in a pub on a Saturday night and get bed till like 1 a.m. And he'd ring me at like 7 a.m. and my phone was on my landline was right on the. Like, it used to really annoy me actually.
Yeah, he was known for calling people at night. But so I got the bottle from this one guy. It was Norandrin. It was a veterinary deca, 50 milligrams per milliliter. It was a jug. So
Ooh.
50 milliliters. So to get 200 milligrams of deca, you would have to do 4 ml. So a regular standard syringe is already 3 ml. So we're talking a lot of oil. So he didn't have any test for me. I said, I know I need test and deca. Everyone says test and deca is a good cycle. So that was November of 1996. I'm 27 years old. About 2 or 3 weeks later, get my wife and I make her drive with me down to Tijuana, Mexico. We crossed the border. Yes, we crossed the border into Mexico. Bought a bunch of Organon used to make these Sustanon ready jets that were they were
Yeah,
already loaded. You just had to assemble them. They were like in two pieces. You just had to screw them together. But you knew they
beautiful.
were real. They weren't faked. They were very hard to fake, and they were expensive. So I bought a bunch of those, and I smuggled them in my socks. I think I had Janet smuggle. We smuggled drugs back in the United States. I'm not proud of it, but that's what I did. There was a
Be
lot, a
proud of
lot,
it. Be
a
proud. I would. I'd be very proud of that.
lot of Southern California bodybuilders at that time. They only went to Tijuana just to try to get drugs back, and they would always you'd give them to the girlfriend or the wife, or because you're coming across the border, they're going to search you anyway.
Yeah.
Long story short, so my first cycle was 2 sustenance a week, so 500 milligrams of a blended testosterone, and I think I had to do, I was trying to do 300 or 400 milligrams of the Deca, which was a lot of oil. So it was all going to my butt. My wife did my shots for me. I didn't do it. I didn't do my shots myself till years later. So, like you, the strength is what I noticed going up first. I think I was squatting like 315 for 12 or 365. Within like a month, I was doing 405. And
Wow.
then, like a month after that, I was doing 495, 5 plates for a few good reps. I started getting really big and puffy. I put on about 20 pounds. My weight didn't really change that much because I must have lost some fat, but I ended up about 230 pounds after my first 8 week cycle. Horrible acne on my back, my shoulders. And if I'm being honest, I think I put on 90% of all the muscle from drugs I ever put on within my first like 4 years of gear use. After that, it was
Okay.
just not much after that.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I mean, I'd like to say otherwise I'd be like 300 pounds ripped, which clearly I'm not. So, yeah, that was my virgin cycle, and I got very, very strong, um, big, puffy, but not. Still, I expected miracles because I had been a very vehement anti-steroid proponent. I looked down on people that did. I worked in the industry where that American Muscle show around Levroni, Dorian, Ronnie, Flex Wheeler, Matarazzo. I was working around these guys for years, but I was thinking, I didn't really, judge them or anything. But I was like, well, I still felt like a smug superiority, like I'm natural. I've earned all my gains and this and that. And I always assumed as soon as I go on steroids, I'll look just like this guy Flex Wheeler, just like this guy Dorian Yates,
You
Mike
were the
Francois.
you were the vegan of your day.
Yeah, vegan gains. So, but it didn't happen. So, yeah. So back to you now. So when did you really start learning about proper gear use and getting the right connections and all that?
Well, in the UK, we're very spoiled, and I was pretty well connected really early on. But then when I moved away from Wales, I moved to Newcastle, and there's a huge bodybuilding scene up there. I mean, everyone plays gyms on every street corner. I was working for bodybuilding legend John Citrone.
Hmm.
It was bodybuilders all over the place. There was part of NABBA. Everyone competed at the NABBA shows, the local. There was EFBB. It was huge. Everyone trained, all the bodybuilders, all the doormen. Do you know what I mean? And I worked for a supplement company, so obviously, I had unbelievable connections. So I was yeah, so I don't know, I just kind of learned as I went along really. But I didn't, one thing I really do regret was not cycling properly, as in I didn't PCT. Like when I came off stuff, I just wanted to come off everything. I never PCT properly. And I used to crash mentally, and stuff like that. And then and then really was when I decided to compete. Because I remember I was in my office, because my office was like glass, and it was the sales and marketing for the supplement company, because you do all the product design and all the marketing, all the sales and everything in the office. And it was in the reception of this gym that John owned, so we could look out onto the full gym floor. And I remember I was at the window, and I was taking the piss out of these doormen. And I said to the guy Jason I used to work with, I said, look at these guys. I just spoke to him. I said, he said he just spent like £800 on growth hormone. He's just to look good on the beach. He's not even dieting. I said, what a freaking idiot.
Yeah.
So, and then I stopped, and I went, oh God, that's me. I'm doing that. I'm doing GH. I'm doing gear. I'm doing all these things. And And I said, oh my God, I'm a total hypocrite.
Mm.
So I decided to start doing like a pre-diet. And then one night I came back home from partying and I took my top off. I was completely off it.
Yep.
And my girlfriend took some pictures of me in the flat.
Yep.
And I remember getting them because they were 35mm. I remember getting them back. It was the end of 2003. And I remember getting the photos back and I was like, wow. I says, oh my God, I actually look half decent. I've got nice wide shoulders. I've got a nice small waist. I'm not missing anything. I've got good shape, good symmetry. So I decided to, I had my website, UK Muscle, and I decided to commit to saying, right, I'm going to compete. And I remember I typed it out and I said, as soon as I press this, that's it. I'm all in. I'm doing this. I can't pull out. And then I started prepping and I did my 13-week prep and then I won my first show and I was totally shredded. I was probably the most shredded person in the whole show. Prepped myself, didn't do any cardio, no diuretics. That was when I really, and the thing is, like, I was kind of insecure about my physique, as in I wouldn't be the biggest. I thought, well, I can get the hardest and I need to do everything in my power to look as good as I can in that time. So I took everything. I could literally, I've actually got the cycles in a box in this drawer, in this desk.
Oh.
I've actually got it all written out. So I can recall exactly what I used for that show. I knew I wouldn't be the biggest, but I just dieted my ass off.
So can you recall generally like what some of the compounds were in your first contest cycle?
Yeah, the first 6 weeks, I did 2 6-week cycles back to back. The first 6 weeks, it would be alternating Sust and Deca. So I'd start first 2 weeks, 1,000 milligram of test. Mm-hmm. Then the second 2 weeks of the cycle would be 750. And then the third 2 weeks of the cycle will be 500. Because they said, my friend had a theory that receptors are wide open and you're better off hitting them hard. So I would alternate between Sust and Deca. And then I would have a 400 milligram base of Deca. I would have 50 milligram of Dianabol. I use 4 IUs of GH. I'd use Nolvadex, 1 Nolvadex a day, 20 milligram. And I think I used Clen then as well from day one. I probably shouldn't have really, but I did anyway. And then I would use like ephedrine for workouts and everything else. Then the final 6 weeks, I would switch to a blend of trenbolone normal tren acetate, sorry.
Acetate, yeah.
Yeah, and then I would put Masteron and then test propionate. And this was really before, it was only a couple of years before they started doing the blends.
Mm.
So you'd have to get 5 ml syringe. You'd have to put a 2 ml shot of Viramone, which is the really thin Arachis oil. That's 2 ml of 100 milligram. Then I would put in like 2 ml of Tren, which is like probably 200 milligram. And then I'd fill the rest up with Masteron.
Oh, okay.
I did that, yeah. And it was literally more than 5 mils, like 5.5 mil. Ooh. So I do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the one side of my glute. And on the other side, I would do 2 shots of Winstrol 3 times a week. Mm. And then I was up in the GH as well. I was up to like 6, 8, 10 IU.
Wow. So everything was going, all your shots were going to your glutes, right?
Everywhere. Yeah. Wow. I don't like, you know me, stripy delts, mate, stripy delts, even then. So yeah, so that's what I did. And then I would up my Clen. I was up to probably too much. I was probably up to like 200 microgram of Clen as well. Probably too high looking back. And then I would switch from Nolvadex to Arimidex. But I found at that 6 week mark, when you were starting to lag a little bit, I found that switching from those compounds to the pre-contest compounds, I've noticed in a few days, I really started to harden up and change. And that kind of gave me a real boost. But I was ready like 4 weeks out, so I was literally like, my skin was paper thin, and I stayed covered up as well. I pretty much trained by myself. I had somebody come over every few weeks to look at me, couple of local bodybuilders. And they'd tell me whether I'd strip off when no one else was looking, because I just wanted to keep it under wraps, And then when I walked out on stage, people just couldn't believe it, At the show, I was talking to, I was with my girlfriend and I was saying hello to friends. I had a hoodie on and I was saying hello to people and they were just ignoring me. They're looking at me, staring at me. And I says, why aren't they speaking to me? And she goes, Giles, I don't recognize you.
Wow.
Because she said, one of the local lads from one of the gyms I was training at, Gold Star, he said, Giles, he says, we refer to you as the sausage armed photographer. He says, we can't believe what we're seeing. And even one of the judges was under the table messaging John Citrone, who I think went on holiday because he didn't want to. He deliberately, I think he went on holiday deliberately for that week because he didn't want to see me make a fool of myself.
Oh wow!
And the
I mean,
judge was under the table going, "Oh my God, Giles looks amazing. He's won this. He's won this. He looks absolutely incredible. And it's a really good lineup."
yeah, I mean, if there was 2023, he could have taken pictures of you and sent them off to John immediately on the phone. But
Yeah,
this was
yeah, yeah.
we didn't have the technology wasn't quite there yet.
Mm.
So I just want to back up. So end of '96, I started gear. 1997, the whole year I was on gear. I did a show July 4th. That was my first show on gear. I was 205 pounds, bloated, did not diet properly at all. In fact, 2 weeks before that show, I was at Flex Wheeler's bachelor party, stuffing, serious, true story, stuffing my face with pizza.
No,
Yeah, it was a shit diet.
no.
I did not diet. I didn't take it seriously. I took second place to my chiropractor at the show that was on Venice Beach. It was cool. It was outdoors and everything. But yeah, I was a big bloat ball. You can see the picture. My face was freaking round and everything. So after I think I did one more cycle after that, and then I said, I'm not going to. I'm going to quit. No more steroids for me. So I took all of 1998 off for steroids. Didn't touch them. I was
Okay.
born again natural. 99 came around. I was still natural, but I started working for I had left my TV job with Lose Wick. I got either fired or quit. We're not really sure to this day how that ended, but I had to do some personal training. I had to have some money coming in. So the guy I worked for, he was like feeding, I was subcontracting from a guy who was a very experienced trainer with, he had like, 50, 60 clients. He was heavily into gear use himself. And so he started saying, I'll give you this, I'll give you, and he started giving me stuff, and I wasn't taking it yet. But after a while, I'm like, it's free drugs. What the hell? So I got back on gear after about a year and a half, year and 9 months of being clean. So I did have that one little spell where I was natural again, and then never again after that. So my first proper show on gear was the 2002 New England in NPC right here in Boston. And to this day, that's the one with the blonde highlights. I post pictures from that all the time because
Yeah.
that might have been my best look. I don't know
You look
because
good. You look good. That was when you were in Iron Man magazine.
yeah, I had the douchebag highlights a few times, but that was my first show on gear. It was my first non-tested show. I had done a couple of NPC shows that were drug tested, the Iron Man Naturals, but long story short, I ended up taking second place out of 11 heavyweights. Uh, First time I ever had strided glutes. Everything was full. I was really strong back then. I didn't have any injuries. I was a very strong presser, very strong rower, very strong squatter. So that might have been, and I had a really great training partner. He passed away since then, but that was like the perfect storm. And I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like the first few years on gear, your body responds to it so much better. And as time goes by, it's really just a battle to kind of maintain your mass, maybe make little incremental gains, but those first few years, that's when you get the most done. Was that your experience?
Yeah, I think because I love competing so much. I went crazy. I did like something like 12 shows in 2 years, and I was just constantly on prep after prep. And in between, because I got such a confidence boost from competing and everything else, and feeling like I could do anything, because I thought, well, if someone like me with shitty genetics can go in and win shows and do British finals and Europeans and all that, like I'm just gonna I'm gonna kind of compete constantly. And in between, I would just go crazy partying because I was like I would say to my friends, "Oh, I'm going to do a prep. I'll see you in 12 weeks. Don't contact me." And I would literally just go like Dorian, just like a monk. Do you know what I mean? Like literally in my routine every single day. And I took it. I was like laser like focused. I never cheated unless it was a designated cheat. And then it would be I used to have a cheat hour. I used to go to Nando's and I would have like chicken, rice, frozen yogurt, glass of wine, and that was my food. And then I'd train shoulders the next day, and I'd be all pumped and everything, feeling great. But yeah, but I probably I should have competed less. I should have PCT'd properly, and I should have had a proper off season. I should have treated like the discipline I applied to my pre-contest. I should have applied to off season, because actually I got worse. If you put my progress, all my contest pictures back to front, you'd be like, wow, that's great progress, because
Right.
I actually went backwards.
Oh
And
wow.
like I think I got a little bit cocky because I thought the first 3 times I got crazy condition, and I think in my head I was like, oh, this is easy. I can get condition easy, because the
Yeah.
second show I did, I was on a 12-week prep, and then 4 or 5 weeks in, I was like, shit, I'm ready. So I jumped in. I jumped into the Mr. Wales 5.5 weeks into my prep, and I took second.
Oh,
And the guy that won it was Jerry Halliwell's personal trainer.
Oh, one of that's Baby Spice, correct?
Bicycle, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a famous photo of him because he's out. It was a bodyguard as well, and he was
Yeah.
out jogging with her, and he's walking her little tiny dog, and he's massive. This guy was about
Yeah.
240. Tim
Yeah.
Blakely. Tim Blakely. He's called. He follows me on Instagram,
Wow.
and he's like a celebrity personal trainer now. I think he trained the guy at Star Wars, John Boyega.
Oh,
So yeah, so I knew, and I actually, even before they announced second, I stepped forward because I thought there's no way I'm beating this lump, because I had condition, but he had condition and size. So I
yeah.
just stepped forward and went, "Thank you very much."
Yeah.
But
Well,
I actually beat one of the guys as well that I used to really look up to in my gym in Hereford a few years before. I used to think, "Wow, this guy's amazing," and I beat him. He got like fifth or something, and I got second.
no.
So,
Yeah, the PCT, I never really did it either because I was ignorant. I was too lazy to do proper research. You know,
I
my
was.
bad. I didn't consult with anybody. I kind of feel like PCT is sort of delaying the inevitable anyway. You're gonna eventually crash. It's not gonna keep you from, if you do steroids long enough and you use enough steroids, eventually you're gonna have to go on TRT. Your body's testosterone production is gonna be destroyed, regardless. So you can keep things going probably a lot longer with PCT. You're functioning, but I think it's eventually going to happen. Yeah, I'm just trying to make excuses for myself because I was too lazy to do it, I guess. But
I was, that's something I did. I should have known better as well. I should have known better. And I was so overzealous with the competing. I competed too many times and I basically probably burnt my system out,
mm,
and, because I like the kind of focus and the discipline. And I took very well to prepping and dieting, and I did like taking gear as well. I really
mm.
enjoyed it. I used to get all excited about
Oh,
choosing
of
what to have.
course.
And I had so much choice. I had so much access,
Mm,
I wasn't, I could choose from 50 different people to buy off. Do you know what I mean? And I was very well connected. So I was very spoiled really in that respect.
it was
But
not. I
and I
was
just
not.
was well, and I was so insecure. I was about my ability to look good on stage. I took everything that I felt that I could, And I mean, if there'd been other things that people have said are good, I would have took that as well.
Yeah. So looking back, what compounds do you think were the most productive for you? Your body responded to the best.
I always found that it's a shame because they absolutely hammer your lipids. They really affect your blood work. Was the 50 milligram Winstrol tablets, not injectable.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yeah.
I could, I mean, back in 2015, I was training in Halifax, and I remember thinking I could compete in 4 weeks. Literally, if I dropped the hammer now, I could be ready on stage in 4 or 5 weeks. That was when I was working for Ronnie Coleman. And
Hmm.
all I was using at the time was these 50 milligram Strombas. But then as soon as I came off them, within days, my physique just went like that.
Mm,
But they were really, really effective. I always responded better to the fast acting stuff rather than I felt like I didn't get anything off the bulkers, like the D-bols and the cypionates and the
hmm.
destinanthates, the sustanols. But when I went on pre-contest stuff,
Yeah.
especially when I was in a pre-contest and I was doing everything right, my body responded unbelievably. I mean, really did. My composition would change dramatically.
Yeah.
But there was one thing I did take in 2005, which did change my physique unbelievably, was IGF.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, within
Hmm.
days. I've never seen such a dramatic change. I did it. So I basically, when I got it, I messaged all the pro bodybuilders I knew, and I said, "How would you use it?" And they said, "Do it intramuscular and stuff." But I forget who told me. Said, "No, use it subcutaneous." So I did 40 microgram after breakfast in the morning, and then I would take 40 microgram after training with my post-workout carbs, because that was probably the only 2 times I was having carbs anyway. I used to go very low on carbs and very high on fats. And I remember within 3 or 4 days, one of my training partners, who was a really like top ranked 70 kilo guy in the UK, he came round and I took my jacket off and he said, "Bloody hell, what's happened to your forearms?" He's like, "The backs of your forearms." He says, "They've got like a really weird plastic look." And he says, "And I can see your upper pecs." He said, "It looks like you've carved up for a week." And I said, "I'm not doing anything. I'm on 80 gram of carbs at the moment." I said, I'm literally, I'm starving, And he said, "Show me your legs." So I dropped my baggies and he went, "Freaking hell." I said, "Where do those veins come from?" And he said, "It looks like you put about 2 inches on your legs since
Oh.
I last saw you a few days ago."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Yeah, I said, all I've been doing is I've been doing this IGF. That's the only thing I've done differently."
Oh.
So, yeah. And then I used it again after that and I got absolutely nothing off it. So I think I think I just got some good IGF at the time and it really worked well for me. but it really put a lot of size on me. Actually, look, it made me look like I completely transformed my physique.
Oh, yeah. And so the second time, do you think that might have been fake IGF?
Just shit. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
shit.
Because I mean, I've never used it. It's the one. It's probably the only thing I've never used. DNP I've never used, but I think there's only a couple things I've never used. And IGF is one. And now you're telling me, man, Ron, you would have been Mr. Olympia. No, but
Ron,
I didn't know it was that dramatic.
can I talk about the things that I really, really think people shouldn't take?
Absolutely.
DNP is an absolute mug scheme. That's a poison using pool cleaner. It actually literally cooks your insides. I think if you have to use DNP, you're a lazy motherfucker and you need to get on the treadmill and drop your carbs. Never touch that shit. Never. Diuretics I took once, and out of all the 15 shows I did, that was a mistake. I took too many, and I completely wrecked my body. My whole 12-week prep went to shit in a few hours. And it took me about 6 weeks before I could even train again. That's what it did. I just felt so rough. I was sick. It really did something to me. Another thing is Newbane, which I was on for 10 years. I bitterly regret that. Because I knew exactly what it was, and it still caught me, and I got addicted. So I was a complete idiot there with that one. So that was on me, and I that, you know, that's literally a gateway to other more serious drugs, believe it or not. And I think that's pretty much. What else would you not recommend people to take?
Well, the one thing is orals factor into cycles, but if they're used properly, if you're careful and you don't stay on them too long, you don't use excessive amounts. But I know people who they don't want to use needles. People message me all the time, like, what's a good oral only cycle? I said, there is no good oral only cycle. You're going to fry your liver, your kidneys. It's a very, very bad idea. But I've talked to people who've done as many as 6 or 8 Anadrol 50s daily for weeks and weeks. Yes.
Kidney killers.
Yeah. I mean, my goodness, your eyes the whites of your eyes are going to be pure yellow within a couple of weeks of doing that. I've never used DNP, but Goon won't mind if I say this. He doesn't care. So when I was training with Goon and Chris, he was prepping for a show and he was on DNP, and he felt so awful that I'd say we were training partners for about a week. He would call me, he would message me or call me and say, I can't make it. I can't even get out of bed. I feel like shit. I'm like,
horrible. Poison.
Worth it?
Poison.
Yeah. And for somebody he got in shape quick anyway. There was no reason for him to use it. He just, like all of us, we love drugs. So we'll try anything. But I was never going to use it anyway, but that just cemented it. I said, anything that makes you feel like you can't even go to the gym and train.
Yeah.
Just diet and do a little more cardio. This is kind of off the topic, but not really. This guy, Robin Strand from Canada, a young bodybuilder guy, he does a podcast, Canadian Beef or something. I saw a quote he put on his Instagram today where he was saying, as a coach, if you hear someone ask you, can I have, followed by anything, they're not all in. If they're already asking, what can I have this or that treat, forget it. You're not 100% committed to a diet because you're already looking to cheat on your diet or have treats. But let's get back to gear.
Another thing is what. Sorry to interrupt. Another thing that just popped into my head is site enhancement oil. I cannot synthol and pump and pose and all that crap. I mean, look at the people that did use it and look at the problems they've had.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not name names, but you know who they are. I mean, you talk to like Milos and guys like that, and he said he did a little bit of it. Jean-Pierre Fuchs I've spoken to, and he said he regretted doing it. I mean, I think and I think so few people. I mean, I don't think there is a way of doing it right anyway, and I think it's just total nonsense. And I've seen some horrific sites on stage, of people who've overdone it. But I think that has no place. That DNP, Newbane, hard diuretics. I think it's just you're playing with fire. Seriously, it's just not worth the risk. And also, like I'll speak about the orals. I was speaking to a guy a few weeks ago, and he was asking my advice, and he was saying, I've been on what was it, 150 milligram of Anavar for 6 months. I went, what? I said, mate, you need to lower that to 50, absolute 30 to 50 milligram maximum. And I said, don't stay on longer than 8 weeks. Come off, take some milk thistle, take some, you know what I mean? I said, clean your system. I said, mate, you shouldn't be doing that. I said, if you went and got a blood test now, you'd shit your pants. because you know, I mean, I used to go to this place called Discus, Drugs in Sport Clinic User Support. It was up in the northeast, and every Thursday between 5 and 7, you could go to this clinic, a free clinic, and there was a free needle exchange, and you could speak to this doctor that was using it for research, and you give your initials and your date of birth, and you get like a membership card, and then basically can go and get free advice. And I used to go get the blood test, and he went, Giles, you need to have a sit down, mate. And my cholesterol was 8 point something.
Wow.
I mean, that's, you know, it should be like, I know, higher than 4 or 5. And he says, Giles, ironically, this was about 12, 13 years ago. He said, Giles, you're in the heart attack zone. He says, if you don't stop doing what you're doing, he said, you're going to be, you know, you're going to have a heart attack. Wow. So I was like, oh, shit, okay.
Well, you know, eventually you did, but it was
yeah,
much
exactly.
later.
Yeah, exactly. It's probably that's probably when all my problems and all my arteries started furring up, you know? So like, I'm saying this because I want people to learn from my mistakes, because I might not be here if I didn't have that surgery and I hadn't been around people. Do you know what I mean? So this is serious, guys. You know, I mean, I used to be really gung-ho, and in my personal life, I was crazy with that as well, with the partying as well. I mean, I'm sure you know what I mean with that. You know, so I was burning the candle at both ends. I mean, actually, it's a miracle I made it to 30.
Well, young bodies are very resilient. You can abuse your body pretty heavily in your 20s and live to tell the tale. You know, if we both did it, if we tried to do that now, goodness gracious.
Oh, I'd kill myself. I'd be dead. 100%.
Getting back to the,
sorry.
I mean, the only time I ever had a doctor tell me I was in very poor health was after that 2002 New England, because I was popping those 50 milligram Winstrol tabs like candy toward the end.
Yeah.
I was at some point I was probably taking like 4, 5, 6 a day just because I was I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I'd be like, I don't think I'm big enough, and I'd go pop another one. I'd wake up a couple hours later, pop another one. I was crazy.
You're a maniac.
I was stupid. And, you know, I was 30. I can't say I was a kid. I was 32 years old, but I had blood. I don't know why I had a physical scheduled like a week later and did the blood work. You know, I don't think I scheduled the physical knowing I was going to be competing then. Anyway, the doctor calls me up, says, you need to come in. I think you might be in liver failure. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He said, this level of your AST, your AGT is this and that. I said, oh, hold on. I said, I just did a bodybuilding show. I was taking all these oral steroids, and I know those are bad for your liver. So let me come back give me like 6 weeks. I'll come back and do the bloods again. And I did, and things were they were pretty much normal at that point. But yeah, that's a problem with the orals, because, you know, it's just a pill. It's easy to take pills. Injecting, you'd have to really be a gung-ho needle freak, love to stick needles in yourself to put enough steroids in your body to have these kind of problems. But I know you had some either crazy stories or horror stories. I want to hear some of your craziest stories around gear, Giles.
Oh, I can't really think now. I can't really think offhand, really. I think I'm kind of telling him at the moment, really. But no, go on. You go. Ask me something else. It'll come to me.
Sure. Yeah, as far as compounds that I never answered that. Compounds that I liked, Tren was always something I responded well to. I don't know who doesn't respond well to Tren, but I also, and Masteron, but, you know, they talk about Tren rage and this and that. And I do agree, you have to have it in you anyway, just like alcohol or anything. It's going to amplify. If you're someone that tends to have a bad temper and fly off the handle, or short fuse, whatever you want to call it, steroids are going to make that much worse. And dieting is going to make it worse too, regardless of the gear use. So I can remember times, you know, I look back with regret because I have 2 children, and there were times when I was dieting and I was on all kinds of gear, and I would just snap at them over stupid things. Like I remember I got a new car. The Infiniti came out with the G37 Coupe, and I got one of the first ones, and I was so happy. I love that car so much. And, you know, it was a two-seater. No, it was a 3. Anyway, my son was in the back. He's like 3 years old at the time. I picked him up from daycare, and it was my fault. I brought him some little donut holes. They're called Munchkins from Dunkin' Donuts. So he's eating them, and they're going all over the place. But he's 3 years old, and I started screaming at him, you're getting that freaking effing crumbs all over my car. And he started crying, and I stopped. I'm like, oh my God, I felt so bad. And to this day, that was, you know, he's 20, that was 20 years ago. I still feel bad about that. And things I said, snapped at my wife about, my kids. So, it's my responsibility. It's harder to control your emotions when your hormones are all over the place. And I remember after I did it, my last competition was July 2013. I had done the Universe and the Masters Nationals back to back, 2 weeks apart. A lot of drugs. I used a ton of drugs for those shows. Probably my heaviest cycles ever. Got into great condition, screwed it up with diuretics. But long story short, we had scheduled a family vacation right after that down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And all those hormones were still working their way out of my system. In my mind, I was not a well person mentally. And I remember just some weird moments, just saying stupid things or acting distant or angry for no good reason. And, I have a lot of regrets about that because, my family shouldn't have had to deal with that. That was my bodybuilding and my choice to use gear and me dieting and things like that. These are all choices I made, and they affected the way I interacted with my family and treated my wife and my kids. And I feel awful about it, even though, they've forgiven me. It's years and years ago, but I still, that's probably my biggest regret. I mean, health wise, I've been very, very fortunate. Let's knock on some wood. My heart, pretty good. I have a calcium score of like 9 the last time I checked. I get the ultrasound done every year. I get blood work. I get all that, and I'm very, very fortunate that my body's very resilient to the damage that a lot of other people. I know guys who did everything I did, and they're dead now, or they're
Wow.
or they're in very poor health. But yeah, I mean, those are my biggest regrets. I mean, what
I
would you say?
I think most of the shows I did, when I did them, I was single
Hmm.
because I did everything myself. I cooked all my own food. I did, I didn't want to burden, when I was probably with someone, that's probably when I didn't compete as much. Do you know what I mean? Or I didn't compete at all. So I would literally just be a loner for those 12, 13 weeks. I would just literally, for most of them, most of the shows,
Hmm.
I think that's just how I perform best because I probably didn't want those kinds of things that you were going through because maybe I expected them to happen because, like I was 100% laser focused. I ate on time every single day, all the different meals and weighed everything. I was so OCD and I didn't want to impinge on anybody, on a partner, a girlfriend's life or whatever. I just wanted to just do what I needed to do. I was just, like I said, just completely dedicated. So, and in the off season, I would, but I never really the trend. I never got the trend side effects.
Hmm.
I got the coughs when I used to inject it. I mean, literally, where you're seeing stars and you're retching over the sink because you're coughing so hard, and for 5 minutes you feel absolutely terrible, and it happens like 50% of the time, doesn't it? But I never really got a lot of those. Yeah, I never got the night sweats and all that. So I was quite lucky in that respect. But
This
yeah,
happened to you. These are the worst things that happened to me were short lived, and they were like abscesses or infections from injecting my leg.
oof,
So, eh, and I had the worst timing because the first time it happened to me, I was using somebody gave me a bottle, or I bought a bottle of that T400 crap, which is 400 milligrams per milliliter of testosterone in one.
doesn't
It's
disperse.
it's it's got so much benzyl alcohol in it. The post injection pain is horrific, but not only that, it traveled down my leg where my whole leg got red and inflamed. I probably should have gotten on some antibiotics or something. But the next day, I had to help my wife. She passed away since, but my wife's grandmother had to move from one apartment to another a few towns away. My brother-in-law and I helped. We did all the work. She was an old woman, dude, and it was pouring rain. I was in such agony trying just my leg because I could barely use that leg, and we had to move. Those hospital beds that go up and down.
Yeah,
Those are very heavy. I don't know what they
yeah.
weigh, hundreds of pounds. That was one thing we had to move from, an apartment around a bunch of stairs onto a moving truck. So then this is how dumb I am. It happened to me again a few years later when my son had to move into college. It's always when I have to help somebody move. So it happened to me again where I did a shot in the leg. I don't know what it was. I've never shoot my quads ever again after that. I learned my lesson. But my leg was incredibly painful, red, inflamed. I was limping. I was favoring the other leg heavily. And this time he was on the third floor of this dormitory. There was no elevator. We had to move everything up. Plus, we were in a parking lot that was like 2 blocks away from the dorm, and yeah, just that would be my worst. I never got an infection to the point where I needed, like an abscess drained or anything like that. Did you ever have infections?
No, never, never. I always went with a green deep. I remember once when I told you that story about Dorian when he saw the bruises on my triceps,
No.
and then I told Charles Claremont, because Charles Claremont came to the offices where I used to work at Metrex and Muscle News.
Yeah.
And I said, I said to him, I said, Charlie, I said, when you can, because he'd only just retired a couple of years before. He retired in '97. This was in '99. I said, Charlie, I said, do you guys, site inject, And he says, yeah. He says, sometimes. He says, when, you need, you run out of spaces and stuff. And I said, oh, he said, why? Well, how do you do it? And I said, well, I get a green, 1.5 inches, the big one.
Yeah.
I said, and I find the outer tricep head,
Ooh.
straighten my arm, and then I lean forward. And then I put 2 mil of Viramone, 100 milligram of test propionate. And basically I put the needle in, and then when it hits the bone, I stop. and he just went, like you dad. He went, oh my God. He says, wow. What? He says, I said, do you do that as well, don't you? He went, no. He said, we do a blue. I do a blue, like an inch needle. Wow. The thinner one. He says, God, that's disgusting, Giles. He says, you're an idiot.
The green is like 1.5 inches?
Yeah, all the way in, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'd go in and stop to hit the bone, and I'd do it on both triceps, That was when I was 23, So, I never really experienced with like super high doses. I don't believe in high doses. I think you're better off getting good quality. I remember having a cycle when I was just taking Deca 50s, these Organons from Greece. Yeah. I had Deca 50s, and then I cycled up to Deca 100s, and I just did a Deca only cycle, and I got really good gains with that, actually. Because it was real. It was really like pharmaceutical grade, I always believed in getting the best quality gear. Spend the money, don't. But the thing is, I had the choice of shit or really good quality, and I could get it for very good prices. And I just, that's what I did, And I made sure all my food was always organic and, really good quality food and the best quality steak and stuff like that, So because I was earning good money and everything, so I was, I didn't have any dependents, and so I just made sure that. Supplements. I work for a supplement company, so all my supplements for free. I have my gym for free. Yeah. So I was really lucky.
Yeah. Getting back to the side enhancement oil, I never used it. I was tempted because triceps have been the bane of my. No, I'm not. I'm 50. I'm not going to do it now. But I mean, the triceps were like the bane of my existence from day one. They just never. They would not grow to the proportions of everything else. I had these massive shoulders, thick chest, and people are like, I don't understand how you can be so strong on presses and your triceps look like that. And I said, I don't know. And they said, well, maybe you're not doing this. I tried everything. So I never did it. But someone I know, someone that I trained with, wanted to do it, wanted to do Synthol or Pump and Pose or whatever it was, the brand name. I don't know. This was probably about 12 years ago. So every morning before we trained, we used to go into, there was regular changing rooms, the big locker rooms, and then there were small ones for like people with kids, and you could lock the door. So we'd go in there before the workout, and I was doing his triceps for him, and I was putting every morning a full 3 cc syringe full of the side enhancement oil into each tricep. And the pain, he was like trying not to cry, basically. This is a big dude. And I felt horrible. I'd be like, sorry. I like trying to get the oil in as fast as I could. And we measured his arms like a month later. He'd put like 1 inch or 1.5 inches on his arms. Then he stopped using it. And we measured them like another month, 1.5 months later, and they were back to normal. So I always thought it was like a permanent thing, but I don't think it is. I think that the side enhancement oil, it does dissipate.
Can I tell you a little story about when I went up to Newcastle? I think it's before. No, I was living there. A guy who used to train at Temple Gym came up, and I took him to a friend's house, a dealer, a friend of mine. And he said, guys, he said, I've got this new stuff. And he said, forget Synthol, forget all this. He said, this is the new stuff. This is what everyone's using. It's called Nolotol. Yeah. He said, it's from Spain. It comes in 5 milliamps, and it's this much. And he says, and the lad says, oh, I'll try it. Because he's a big, really big kid. He was good, but very good bodybuilder. He did very well on the UK scene. So anyway, he goes into the kitchen. I wait in the living room. He comes in, and he basically puts a full amp into his tricep. He comes back, and he says, right, wait a few minutes. He says, now look at the one tricep compared to the other tricep. And the thing was that was really good at it. It didn't blur. So it filled it out, but it didn't blur the muscularity, like the detail, which synthol does. It takes away the detail, you know?
Yeah.
So he was like, wow, give me some, give me some, give me some, you know? And that was what everyone was using like pre-contest, you know? And there was guys taking Viagra backstage to get a pump. Yeah. So I mean, I can't imagine what the, you know, if something went wrong and you went on stage, you know?
Well, I mean, you know, fully transparent, I've been using like a very low dose of Cialis every day, not necessarily for sex, although it helps with sex, but it does give you that crazy pump. Your muscles
Is
do get
it?
much better pumps on a very small, just regular dose. Viagra is different because it's short-lived, but
Well,
Cialis stays in your system for like 48 hours.
the guy who's sorting my new car out, this leasing guy, he was telling me, because he's got a hole in the heart and he's got a lot of medical issues. And he says, Giles, I have to take, was it 25 milligram of Viagra 3 times a day? He says, to thin my blood.
Yeah.
Like, wow. He says, yeah, I've got boxes and boxes of it. He said, that's what I use it for.
The studies
But,
are coming out now. Dr. Thomas O'Connor just put something on his Instagram. I'm sure he's done a couple videos about it. Low doses of like that type of drug. What are they called? The class of drugs, whatever they're called. I know I should know this,
my
but they're
cock's
actually,
flopping.
what is it?
It's, the chemical name's called my cocks are flopping.
Oh, come on, Giles. But they're actually being used for treating heart disease to prevent
Oh,
heart
wow.
disease.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
so
Okay.
good drugs, man. Good drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I guess we've talked about drugs plenty. We could talk about drugs all day, man. But
I
you
just
know,
I found I remember after my first show, me and my girlfriend went to New York for her birthday.
yeah,
And I remember because obviously after the show, I started eating like loads of sugars and everything else. I remember being in Times Square and I couldn't read anything. I couldn't see, I couldn't read the menus, I couldn't read the signs. And it took about 2 or 3 weeks for my eyesight to return. I thought I was going to go blind. So that was after my first show. And then in 2013, after my last show, when I did Classic, when I qualified for the British, 2 weeks out, I've got some 2 weeks out pictures, and my lats were striated. I looked full, everything separated. I looked nice and full. I was on like pretty much 80 gram of carbs. And then the week before the show, I carbed up on the Monday, really like early, really heavily, like 700-800 gram of carbs, and my weight was dropping. So I was like, oh, maybe I need to eat more carbs. Weight was dropping more, and I lost, I think it was 18 pounds in a week. And then by the time I got to the stage, I looked terrible. I mean, I looked like a skinned rat. And I'm amazed I qualified. I got third out of like 9 or something and qualified for the British. And I remember looking at the pictures. I got one nice backstage picture here and on the wall next to the Mr. Universe, Dave Titterton, who was guest posing. And I remember just, yeah. And anyway, after the show, that was when I got really sick because I was still staying in condition. And then I was filming for MD. I was filming Ant Bales and Dan Smith, the wheelchair pro bodybuilder. And I kept like running back and forth to the toilet. And then I said, guys, can we do the training footage? And I said, guys, can I come back tomorrow and do the interview? I said, with you two. I said, because I feel like I'm going to keel over. I feel really ill. And Ant Bales, type 1 bodybuilder, says, John, let me just test your blood a minute. He says, you're looking very gaunt. He says, something's not right here. Tested my blood and it was 26 mmol. Should be like 6. He says, Giles, you need to get yourself to a hospital. And obviously I found out and I collapsed at the British finals when I was covering it for MD. Wow. It's funny because I turned up and I'd just been to Cyprus. I was all tanned up and I was in a suit. And I qualified and everyone assumed I was competing. But I was there working for MD, you know? And after the show, ended up in hospital again. And then a couple of weeks later, I went to the specialist and then they gave me some insulin and I got off. And then they said, yeah, you are diabetic. You see, you're diabetic. And then, I remember going on the insulin, I think put 4 or 5 kilos on in a week. And I went from falling down the stairs because my legs were so weak to squatting like 225 for 10 reps. You know, I mean, that's quite a jump just because my body was getting the insulin it needed. So yeah, and then I never competed since. And I just, well, obviously I'd be crazy to compete now. I'd be like a death wish, you know.
So you developed diabetes at like 30 years old?
2013, I was 36.
Wow. I mean, do you know why it happened? Why you became diabetic?
They don't really give you, they just give you insulin, send you on your way. I've tried asking, but they don't know. And they, you know, and you thing is, you tell them what, you know, when I was in Ireland in my hospital, they were saying, so what, you know, what have you, this is unusual, your heart disease for someone of your age, you know, can you tell us what things you've done? Because you said you used to be a bodybuilder, you know, I said, yeah. And I reeled off the things and they didn't even know what most of them were.
course they
And
don't.
he was
Of
like,
course they don't.
the guy says, I need another sheet of paper. He's like, bloody hell, what's this? How do you spell that? I've never heard of
Yeah,
this. And I was
yeah.
like, yeah, just, and I said, you know what? I says, I feel really ashamed now. I said, can we just stop? I said, just, please. I said, you're making me feel really stressed out here, and I kind of don't need that right now.
More innocently, I remember like medical forms. There'll be like a little box saying, list any diet nutritional supplements you take. I'm like, in this space? No, 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 no. I need like I would need a whole sheet of paper. And I'm like, I just say multivitamin. I'm not going to put creatine and glutamine. They don't need to know. What the hell are they going to know about all that? Anyway, I want to wrap it up so I can go train because I want to know what I'd love to expand on this topic in the future, but I want to know what the viewers, what kind of things do you guys want to hear us talk about? You probably want to know all the pro cycles or something. Maybe we can shed some light on that, on what we do know.
You know what, Ron? Do you know what, Ron?
Mhm.
I've done tours and I've spent a little time with a lot of pro bodybuilders, and they've told me what they use. And I think people will just say they're liars, but
Right,
I'm telling
right.
you, I believe them. I won't mention names, but it's like really modest. It's just these people are genetic superiors, and they respond very, very well to very, very little gear. But they always say, like, they make sure they get good quality stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, thing is, when I was pre-contest, my body used to change drastically when I took gear because I was doing everything right. I was eating at the same times, the food was weighed out, I was getting the right sleep, I was training maximally. Every single training session was full on, and it was really, you never had a bad training session when you're on prep, because your body is so, you're giving it everything it needs. You're not out partying on the weekend and then not eating the next day properly. And I was doing everything right, and that's why I like prep, because I like the control I had over my body, and I loved taking all the different compounds and stuff and seeing the effects it had on my body. It was always a very transformative thing for me mentally as well. But
I love the structure of it.
yeah, me too.
Cardio into this time, train this at this same meals every day. There was no questioning. You knew you were following a plan. You were just executing a plan. And I always got the worst, kind of like postpartum depression, like women get depressed after they give birth. After contests, I used to always get like really bummed out for a couple weeks, like,
I did.
what do I do now? You can eat what you want, but you know, all you're thinking about for months is, oh, I can't wait to eat this and that. And then once you can eat it, you're like,
Do you know what, Ron? Deprivation is good for the soul, and it makes you have an appreciation for all the things that you're disciplining yourself against. That's what I liked about it. Like, I would go out for a meal, and I would just, like somebody been in prison for 10 years. You everything tastes amazing. But I would actually find excuses to carry on dieting after a show.
wow, okay,
Yeah, I would
I
just
did
carry on
not.
dieting. I would just carry on dieting, and then a couple of times I went a bit crazy with the food. But I think if I'm going to talk about regrets, if we were looking back now,
Yeah.
I wished I'd done cardio.
Oh wow.
I wished I'd done cardio. I never did. I did a little bit of cardio for one of my couple of shows in 2006, but nothing much. But I never
Wow.
did cardio, and I always got very good condition. And I wished I'd PCT properly. I wish I'd put a proper off-season plan in place, and I probably should have come off for longer as well. Because I don't know. I was spoiled for choice. So I kind of just went a bit crazy, really. But I never went high dose. Never went high dose.
Yeah, I mean, the highest I ever, a couple cycles I did go up to like 3 grams a week for probably 8, 10 weeks just to see if I'd get any better results. And I really didn't. I just got a little more bloated,
Yeah,
fat. It wasn't a good, like, look, it
more
wasn't a good
side
look.
more side effects.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're meant to, like you said, if you're meant to get huge, I know this is a big debate. If you're meant to be one of those big freaky people, it's not going to take boatloads and boatloads of gear to do it.
No.
And if you're not meant to be like those guys, all the drugs in the world aren't going to make you look like that.
I think get your eating right. I mean, I've some of the biggest guys I've been around, they eat non-stop and they eat a lot. I mean, they're just, that's more, I think that is actually more important than gear, in terms of if you're going to bump something up, like when I speak to like Chad Nichols, he's big on food, like I had Brent Swanson on. He said like he was going from like 8-ounce portions of protein to like 14 ounces. Do you know what I mean? He says, and he felt that made a difference. That put size on him. Ronnie, I said, what was the biggest difference with Chad? When your physique really improved? And he said, food. He said, my God. He said, the food. He said, some days I'd be you know, I mean, I was a big guy, a huge guy. And he said the food, he said it was almost too much. He says, but my God, it put the size on.
Yeah, he just said in a recent thing, Chad had him eating a pound of meat at every meal. A pound. That's 16
16 ounces.
ounces.
Oh my God.
A lot. I know he's a big dude. That's still a lot of food to do that like 5 times a day. Oof. All right, so I'm gonna wrap it up, Giles, because I want to talk about this in the future, but I want to know what the viewers where they want us to go with this, because we could go in 1,000 different directions. Obviously, this is our whole life here. So, guys, let us know, what do you want to talk about, or it doesn't have to be drug related. Is there some other topic, or maybe a guest? Whatever you guys want, we're here for you guys. That's what the Power Hour is all about. So, yeah. Guys, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. If you like these videos, there's a thumbs up thing. It doesn't cost you anything. Click on that. You can share it to your social media. We appreciate that. And there's a little bell thing up in the corner. Let you know when we have all the great content like MD Global Muscle, Buff Bombshells, Brazilian Beats, MD Muscle Talk, Ron Line Report, Ask Dr. T, Fact Attack, No Way Jose, on and on and on. So much great content on this channel. Put the notification bell on. And you got to put it on your phone too, guys, if you didn't know that. So that's it. Thank you, Sir Giles Tiger Thomas III. Yeah, it's a little later over there in the UK, but you have yourself a great weekend. And everybody out there, we appreciate you watching the MD Power Hour, and we'll see you next time. Yeah, buddy. Hey, did you like that podcast? Smash that like button, subscribe to MD, and please comment down below. Thanks for watching.